the Backroads Bill Podcast. I'm Ben, and back in May, we had the pleasure of talking to today's guest. And I know it's been a while. We're almost in September. I think we only have about a week left to go before then. So yeah, it's been a few months ago, but we're really excited to finally get this one out into the real world, because today we have on Clermont Duval, who, if you are in the art scene, or if you are somebody who is a connoisseur of art, likes to purchase art, especially local art, if it's very nature-related, especially nature-related, you've probably heard the name Clermont Duval. In fact, he's for many years, he had a gallery here in the area locally that you might have been to if you were one of those art people. And so today we get to chat to him about his life as a painter, as an artist, what got him into painting, how have things changed over the many years he's been painting, and of course, there's always some great stories that can only really come from being in a profession for many years, and there's a lot of cool stories here. It's an absolutely fantastic conversation that we had with Clermont. So let's get to it right after a word from today's lead sponsor, Source for Sports North Bay. It's almost that time of year. Early mornings at the rink, fresh notebooks and backpacks, and a community gearing up for another great season of varsity sports. At Source for Sports North Bay, we're proud to be part of it all. Whether it's finding your kid's first pair of skates, gearing up for tryouts, or outfitting your team for the season ahead, we've got you covered. Because here, we're not just a sports store, we're neighbors, coaches, teammates, and fans. And we're proud to cheer you on every shift, step, and stride of the way. Visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street and let us help you along your way. So today we always have special guests, and I always say that we always have special guests, but today we have an extra special guest, someone we've been trying to get on the program for a while, and finally got him into the studio today. Welcome in Clermont Duval. How are you doing?
I go by the weather.
Yeah, I know. Pretty good weather today.
I'm going to do very good in the next few months. The sun shining.
Well, Ben, it's
maybe rain today, so maybe I'll be grouchy this afternoon. But I'm fine this morning.
Perfect. That's awesome.
I see a lot of sunshine here. Look at all these lights.
It is a special day, not only for Northern Ontario, where we talk a lot about Northern Ontario, but across the country and around the world, to have Clermont Duval, one of Canada's foremost artists, been painting forever, and we're going to talk about what forever actually really means. But Clermont, in this for the Mattawa area, you've been there for a long time, and that's actually where we're going to start. When did you come to Mattawa, and why did you come to Mattawa?
Sorry again?
When did you come to Mattawa, and why did you come to Mattawa?
Oh. No, that's a long story.
Yeah, well.
It's a family. My family was in lumber business. And where we live, way down the St. Lawrence Seaway, around Rivière-du-Loup, Rimouski.
Yeah.
Over there are big trees of spruce with about 15, 16 inch in diameter. Now, being in lumber business, my brothers, older brothers, first visited the area of the northern Ontario. And they saw all these big pine trees. And they saw the potential there compared to the forest that was down the St. Lawrence Seaway. Since we were in lumber business, the whole family moved in this area to carry on the lumber business, but in a more payable, more sustainable way because of the nice forests that were here, untouched in those days. We're talking about 1959, a while back. And that's the reason why the family moved in this area.
Then, and how did you get to start painting now?
I would say it's more like, when did I start artwork itself? Because I was more doing lots of illustration before I even started any kind of paintings. The West, I can't even remember when I started because, like many kids, pencil in hand, paper. I have a 2-year-old grandson that's 2 years old, and he has a pencil in his hand. I'm sure he won't remember when he started, like all kids, of course, we all do that. And I carry on, and I really enjoyed drawing and illustrating a world that I wanted. Sometimes I imagine a world, and I would illustrate it to see it, what it looked like. It was pretty rough. And something that really kept me going is that even if it was a very bad drawing, I would show that to my mother. And my mother would go, whoa, so nice. And she was my mother, of course. She wouldn't do. Then I got addicted to that reaction. I say, whoa, I like that reaction. So I say, I'll draw another drawing and show it to her. And she went, whoa. So then I got, of course, very much addicted to that reaction. And I kept on drawing and stuff. And in 1973, that was really a very important date in my life. I had a very serious accident. It was a boating accident, and I got burned pretty bad. About 60% of my body. At first, it looked a lot worse than it was. And the doctor says it looks like third-degree burns, but it wasn't. My hands were the worst. And the doctor says, oh, the articulation and all this, you got to keep doing exercise with all these bandages and stuff. And I got very worried about losing the use of my hands. Now, because it looked so bad. And the doctor said, if infection gets in there, we're in trouble. We got to be so careful. And they were careful. Well, I was at the burn unit in Scarborough. And then in the hospital, I made a promise to myself, not to anybody else. I promised that if I was to regain the use of my hands, that I would be an artist. And that was the turning point. And of course, the burns weren't that bad. Few skin grafts and stuff like that. And the hands worked very, very well and very fine. And then I really got into drawing a lot more.
Yeah, and I want you to tell us, and the viewers and the listeners on the Backroads Bill podcast here, that Maria Chapdelaine, the classic Quebec novel, and that you illustrated the storyboard. Tell us about that.
Yes, well, since just prior to Maria Chapdelaine, I was doing some graphic novels. Graphic novels weren't even called graphic novels in those days. They didn't even exist. It was probably the first graphic novels around. And I even called them drawing novels. In French, it was dessin roman, which means drawing novels, instead of graphic novels. And that's what they were called, and they were whole stories by themselves. And a publisher in Montreal noticed the drawings, and he kind of liked the drawings that were done, and they suggested if I was interested in doing Maria Chapdelaine in a comic book form, like graphic novel again. And it was a great opportunity for me because of the popularity of this novel. Now, many movies have been made, lots of reprint and even English translation were done of Maria Chapdelaine. And to be the first one to do a graphic novel of Maria Chapdelaine, and there hasn't been any since, was a door opener. And working on that, I was well paid also by the publisher in those days. I noticed a good opportunity to make a fair living. And I worked 6 months on that project. And for research, people were asking, what were you doing for research and all this? And I had a very old Eaton catalogs. And I was taking all the costume and the Eaton catalogs and the stove, how they looked like and all this, because it was dated right in those times. So the Eaton catalog was a great tool for illustrating Maria Chapdelaine. And people ask, what's so special with Maria Chapdelaine? And I said, well, everybody in that comic book are dressed at Eaton's. They all buy at Eaton's. Yeah. Everybody's dressed at Eaton. And, of course, that was good on the market. It came out and did very well. It was sold out. And some years, it was black and white and done very cheap paper and all that. In those days, it was done like the American comic books. But in 2013, we redid Maria Chapdelaine in color, a new version of it. And I changed the cover. I really didn't like what the publisher, they used my cover that I drew, but they put their own colors in there. And it was pink and pastels, and there was no such colors in those days. It was all earth colors. The clothing was earth colors. So I redid Maria Chapdelaine in 2013 in color, colorized by computer. A new cover, and I used the old cover, the back one with my colors.
Your colors, yeah.
And that's the story of that.
Yeah, no, and that led you to other graphic novels as well. But so then you kind of branched out. I mean, you lived in the Mattawa area and inspired by the Mattawa, Ottawa rivers and everything around. And then tell us a little bit about, you had this story that you had the young boy in some of your paintings, and then you got into the Little Red Canoe. But first of all, tell us about the young boy and those things.
Since the graphic novel is about telling stories, and the story side of illustration was extremely important in my work. And when I started painting, this urge to tell stories was still in me. I just needed to include that in the illustrations. And I decided to create a series of painting that was called Children's and Wildlife. And that's where the story paintings came in. There were several of them. I did like maybe 20 of those with story paintings, yes. I would call them movies in paint.
Ah, okay.
And that was a whole series also that was called Children and Wildlife, Movies in Paint. That was the marketing scheme of that.
Yeah.
And one of my the one that I prefer the most of all these story paintings, and it's one that's not very well known, and it was called Silver Eyes. And it was about a young native boy who was blind, and his guide, like a blind person has a dog now, guiding them around. Mm-hmm. In the storyline, the young boy was guided by a white deer, a young white deer. And the boy, to pay back his debt to the deers, because he was helped by them, he was guided by them, to pay back his debt, he was teaching them to fight back against the predator. They had the tools, they had the weapons. And whenever the wolves or whatever animal would attack them, the boy taught the deers to attack. So that was, Silver Eyes was a story that I really liked because it's kind of linked to nature and the kind of a defense, and of course. And it was one of my favorite. Now, the most popular was the Admirable Violent series. Now, there was a trilogy of 3 paintings that follows from 1, 2, 3, a whole storyline. That would take a while to tell the whole story. But the Admirable Violent was about a wolf, of course. And the very first one, maybe we can tell the short story of the very first one. Mm-hmm. The very first one was this young boy was lost in the bush. And it was in winter, and it was very cold, maybe in minus 25, minus 30, something like that. And he couldn't find his way. And some wolves came out very close to him, and they kept him warm. So he lay down against the wolves. And there was 3 wolves, and one of the wolves was a black wolf. And he had a medallion. The black wolf had the medallion. And he was also missing a leg. In the morning, when they found the boy, they said, "What's this? This is incredible. What's happening? How come he survived such a cold weather?" And the young boy said, "There was a black wolf with 3 legs that kept me warm." And people say, he's losing his mind. This can't be. Of course, he was talking about the black wolf. And that story was dismissed. It was brought back home. And then the boy's father was a poacher. And he was hunting by night. And one night he got out hunting, and he saw this animal in the distance, and he shot it. And when he got close to the animal, it was a black wolf with 3 legs. Mm. And then he remembered his boy's story about this black dog with 3 legs that saved him, that kept him warm. And then he said, "What's this?" He just killed the savior of his boy. And he noticed the medallion around the neck of the wolf. So he took the medallion and brought it home and gave it to the boy. Now, the medallion, what happened is that black wolf was probably caught in a trap. Somebody else than the trapper saved him from the trap. And when he was healed, when the wolf was back functional, he was back and ready to be released again in nature, whoever saved him, he's the one that gave the wolf the medallion. And in the story, the boy ends up with the medallion. And in the second story, then that medallion will travel through the 3 paintings.
Yeah, no, it's interesting how you weave that into a storyline, and there's always a story behind every painting because there's some inspiration. How did you get into the series of and my favorites, and I have many of your prints, especially the Little Red Canoe. How did you get into that?
Well, in the art world, if you go on the Quebec side, mostly on the Quebec side, if you go and visit galleries over there, you'll walk into a gallery and there'll be this painter there, not on site, but paintings of the painters, paintings of these French-Canadian artists. And you'll notice this artist, all he does is shoes. He paints shoes. And shoes are tied up to the wall, laced up to the wall. And every painting of his are shoes, but different kinds of shoes. And all there is shoes. Now, the other one, all he paints is head of horses. And every time you see a head of horses, you go close and you notice the signature. It's the same guy. It's all he does is head of horses. Change the angle a little bit, change the light a little bit, but it's always, and it's kind of their marketing scheme in a way where you kind of recognize the artist by seeing the subject. The subject is directly linked to the artist. And some others will just do scenery of the seascape. And with a certain boat there, fishing boat and stuff like that. And being a canoeist, and like Bill, the canoe was my subject of principle. And then much better because the canoe travels all over the place. And canoe existed since thousands of years. And it was a subject that you could go in the past with it, you could go today. And the canoe has this nice quality. Imagine a fiberglass kayak in a scenery. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. Or a white person walking in the bush or whatever. Doesn't fit. But it seems you have a native person in the painting, they kind of fit in nature. They kind of blend in. So that's the quality of the canoe. The canoe kind of blend in nicely, and you can picture that canoe in all kinds of subject matter, all kinds, any time of the day, early morning, mist, the sunset. You can go back 300 years because I have a series of canoe paintings that are titled 300 years ago. They're birch bark canoe, of course. And then again, there's a whole lineup of... now, the native, in my paintings, the birch bark canoes are painted with a white birch on the outside. But no, the native canoe were... The inside of the birch was on the outside of the canoe, not the white part, the more orangey part. But for the aesthetic of the painting, it looked better with the white on the outside. And of course, I remember seeing talking. We were a group of artists, and we met Bateman, and Bateman was saying the same thing. He was saying, "Well, there's this bird here, and it should be in these kind of surrounding, but it looks a lot better in this kind of setup." And he would say, I have this license to
you have the artistic license to do whatever you want.
Pretty, make it look good.
Yeah,
and of course, it's a business. You got to make a living too. You got to be able to sell those paintings.
Well, I have a Little Red Canoe, and that's why I appreciate that. And it's a cedar strip canoe, and every time I see a new Little Red Canoe.
Very true. As the story paintings were kind of my trademark, now the canoe paintings are becoming they have been, and they are my trademark.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, and they show up in various places. And for me, I always ask Clermont, you know, because I'm big about geo-referencing. Where was that sketch? And many places, many times in his paintings, like the Little Red Canoe and the base of Parachute Falls. Well, I've been exactly there at that same spot with my canoe. And so that means a lot to me.
It does. And you wouldn't be surprised that my canoe is red. And it was built by a guy in North Bay Hill, Bill
Shorsky.
Shorsky.
Who's passed on,
Yes. And I would say I have the Guinness World Record. It's not in their book, but it should be.
It should be, yeah.
Of the canoe that has been into more paintings than any other canoe in the world.
Well, there you go. I think we should prove that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Lots of
positively.
paintings were done from that canoe.
Yeah, and You've been a great inspiration for the Canadian Ecology Centre. You've painted for a couple of our milestones. You've painted, and also I must say you've painted me. But the first painting when it was one of our anniversaries. How did you come to that inspiration? Because it's all among the trees. People would have to see that. But the
one with the four seasons,
yes,
correct?
Yeah,
yes. And if people ever have a look at that painting or being at the Ecology Centre, they'll find out that they don't really like winter very much because the winter part of the painting is very little segment at the end. So you have the summer here and spring.
You're a summer guy?
Spring, summer, fall, and then winter. But winter only covers a little part of the painting. Maybe a shovel or two of snow. That's it. That's it. Have more snow than that in that painting. And the idea was also to get in the logo of the Ecology Centre in there, in that painting. And somewhere where we get into because the logo has the summer and the fall colors in it.
Cluster of leaves.
And it was right in between the summer and when the summer changed into the fall season. And we have that logo in there with the tree maple leaf, the green and the orange and the red, which is a beautiful, beautiful logo. Part of the painting. And I will also, part of the title of the painting was it's called the Fourth Seven, the number 7, because we always say 777 is the lucky number. And if you're at the casino, anybody would know when you get 3 sevens, it's a good payoff. But now, 777 was the lucky number for nature, meaning that nature can rely on luck to survive, maybe, but probably not anymore. And the fourth 7 was the Ecology Centre, the one that's there to give it a little push so it can make it a line, so it can keep on surviving. Nature has this fragility. If one part of nature fails, the whole ecosystem collapses. Now, it's like your body. Mm-hmm. Bill, you've been through a tough time there. You would glad you're back. But if one part of your body quits, if one part of your body shuts down, especially if it's sometimes very minor little thing, everything else works fine. Your whole body collapses. Nature is that fragile. And I would say 1,000,000 times more fragile because the ecosystem is so complex. Much more. We say, your human body is very complex. That's the most complex element in the universe. No, the ecosystem is 1,000,000 times more complex and fragile. And who said that? Einstein was saying, if you take the bee out of the equation, the bee, one little insect, and the whole world will collapse. See how fragile it is.
It is,
indeed. And there's thousands of species that are linked to that fragility of the ecosystem. And the Ecology Centre is there and helps it. It's a helping hand. The number 4, the 7, the fourth 7. That was the title of the painting.
We talked a lot about the connection, not the connection, but we talked a lot about French and French culture, and you've had a kind of a foot in both doors, right? You're from Quebec. You've lived many years in Ontario. The French have, especially in France, right? There's a big connection there between art and the culture. I was just curious how in Quebec, is there a different art culture there than there is here in Ontario?
If you were to visit some galleries over there and visit some galleries in Ontario, it's dramatic, the difference. It's the colors, the application of the colors. They kind of use very bold and very pure colors, and the light. They're very much into the light. Now in the English Canada, it's more like it's a precision painting. Even though they're impressionists, some impressionist artists out there. They're more tame. They're more kind of blends in everything. Well, the French Canadian, that's a good question because the French Canadian, I was stunned by when I visit all the galleries. I'm always impressed when I visit the galleries over there. I'm still very much impressed when I visit other galleries in the rest of Canada. But in Quebec, you really notice the difference. It's night and day. It's like this bright light. And here it's more like a tame, more like subdued, blending in kind of light. That's the difference.
And you notice that in your paintings for sure.
Yeah, well, I try to, but I'm never as bold as they are, and I wish I was. No, I was traveling in Gaspésie. Oh, no, I was in Saint-Paul, Charlevoix. That's the region where many artists are. And there was this old man painting in the field. And I, of course, stopped the car. And I'm in that field. I'm very interested in how things are done. So I went toward him. He must have been like 90 years old. Artists are known to live long life. I'm just saying that about me there. I'm just saying that about some that I've met. And this old man was there, and he was painting with a brush this big. And I said, "Oh, why such a big brush?" He said, "I've been painting this scene," whatever was in front of him. He said, "I've been painting this scene for 30 years. He said, "At first, I was using 1,000 brush strokes to do that painting, meaning lots of details and stuff, smaller brush, maybe 2,000 brush strokes. And my goal was to do this scene with maybe less than 100 brush strokes, which means that boldness, and what you were just asking, that boldness in the strokes of paint. And when he was putting a brush stroke at one place, it was the correct color at the correct place. And he had all that training in that. And it was bold, but it was absolutely brilliant and smart. And to learn to paint like this is 1,000 times more difficult than paint pure realist. Now, it's still figurative, very much of a figurative, but it was very bold, very, very, very bold. Now, I've always had this kind of a dilemma with pure abstract art and very bold paintings like I saw there, which were very much figurative. But what bothers me a lot is that the abstract world of painting, when you listen to abstract, when you go to schools, when you go to museums and all that, abstract, we hear that all the time. Abstract, in our world, of a reality world, abstract art takes maybe 1% of all the art that's done in this world. Maybe 0.5 of 1%. Because figurative art is very much the art that's way, way, way ahead and has always been. Now, people say, "Oh, how's that?" That's not true. Abstract art here, that's up that, people like that, the patterns and all this. Yes, I say, fine. It's beautiful in curtains. It's beautiful in bed covers. It's beautiful on your clothing, right? But it doesn't take more space. And I say, so often I say, "Oh, yeah, you're hanging curtains where there's no windows," which is kind of pure abstract. And what people don't look at, the other aspect of art, is that if I look in this room here, the shape of this chair, this speaker here, the design of the Dell computer or the Apple computer, there are great designer artists working on that. When you get in your car, the best artists in the world were designing that car. The artists are not all in front of a canvas. Now, the other place where the big majority of artists are, the greatest one, the best one in the whole world, you know where it is? Hollywood. When you look at a movie, you go see a movie like Avatar. 1,500 artists work on the movie Avatar. These are all these incredible decor and the characters themselves. Who were they created by? The greatest. These are the greatest. In days of ago, a great artist was the artist painting on the canvas. There was no photography, and that was the Hollywood days. There was theater, and that was it. But today, Hollywood would employ the big majority. And when I hear about schools and all this and teaching to the kids the abstract, and say the kid, "Don't paint this too realist, go to abstract." There's no doors. All doors are closed in that field. Now we say, "Oh yeah, but there's abstract painting that sells for millions." How many? Very few. And these are bought by very rich people that are coached by curators, museum curator, that are coaching them to do that kind of work. And you see them in museum and all that. Now, imagine now today, Bill, I'd like to say that An artist like Robert Bateman, which is a national monument in the art world. Robert Bateman is not in a single museum in Canada. His work is nowhere to be seen in museums. If you want to see his work, you got to go into galleries. Or if you go in other countries' museum, Bateman is there. But he's not in Canadian museum. They say, the curators, when they talk about Bateman's work, they say, Bateman, what's the word? He's an illustrator. He's an illustrator. This is not art. Bill! It's true. That's what they say. I was in Ottawa. There was my American family there. They say they were at this little Canadian Art Gallery. They were there in the entrance when you buy the ticket, and they say, we want to see the Bateman room. We want to see the Robert Bateman paintings. Bill. No, they says, there's no Robert Bateman here. We don't have that here. He's just an illustrator. Like, that's a shame. Now, another story also about this subject. There was this professor of art, and he said, I got to take it over. Mm-hmm. He said, Clermont, he said, there's this painting that you did, and I'd like to use it in my classroom. Oh, I was flattered. I said, sure, of course, go ahead. You know what he did with the painting? He was teaching the kid, this is not what you should do. This painting represents what you should not do. The exact opposite. Instead of teaching the kid, open the doors. Now, I said to the teacher afterward, I said, because I heard about it, and then I saw it was even posted on the internet. I said, why are you teaching this to the kids? You're closing all the doors. Where are they going to go in life? If they don't produce something that's kind of, if they want to make a living, now it's another thing if they want to work all their life and put it all in the garage somewhere or in the basement. But if they want to make a living, if they want to open the doors, and it doesn't have to be in front of a canvas, could be anywhere. In clothing and designing. Your glasses. An artist work on that, Bill. Look, the logo on your sweater. Beautiful native.
Dear North Bay, you've always been more than a place on the map. You're home to me. This is where I built a life with my husband, raised our kids, and taught in local schools for over 24 years. I'm proud to be part of this community. Earlier this year, my world shifted. After living with anxiety, depression, and PTSD for much of my life, I reached a point where I couldn't keep going alone. Walking into the emergency department at the North Bay Regional Health Center was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But what I found there changed everything. A nurse who made me feel safe, a crisis worker who truly listened. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. That care gave me hope, and it inspired me to give back by supporting local healthcare so that others in our community can access the same compassionate care I did. If my story resonates with you, I hope you'll consider supporting the NBRHC Foundation. Please visit nbrhcfoundation.ca or call 705-495-8125 to give. Because mental health is health. With gratitude, Tiffany Van Meer.
North Bay's turning 100, and what a time to be here. From the buzz of the Heritage Parade to sunset concerts at the waterfront, the city is alive with celebration. And you know who's right in the middle of it all? Homewood Suites by Hilton North Bay. We're proud to be a part of this milestone moment. Whether you're coming home from a family reunion, planning a gathering with friends, or just simply making the most of everything the Centennial has to offer, our doors are open. Stay in a spacious suite that feels like home, with a full kitchen to cook in, room to relax, and a space to unwind after a full day of fun. Are you hosting something bigger? Our event spaces and amazing local partners like the Grand and Stock Transportation make it easy to bring people together. Best of all, they're just steps from the action. The fireworks, the food trucks, the music, the laughter, it's all right here. Celebrate 100 years of North Bay with us. Use code Centennial to save on your stay anytime this year. Be at home with Homewood Suites by Hilton North Bay. Join the party today at 495 Oak Street West or give us a call at 705-495-3000.
You always wonder about where inspiration comes from, and I'm going to tell a little story very quickly. Is that during COVID, I wrote that 411 haiku poems every day, one every day for 411 consecutive days, and then I got onto another tangent about I saw this nice spot off the highway on Highway 17 just to the west of Mattawa, and I would go there every single day at different times, and I'd keep my streak going. In fact, I would take photos of it even at nighttime when there was not much sea, even with my headlights highlighting this beautiful little wetland scene. It had depth in it, and it was in my mind, because I used the camera, it caught my eye. So every day I would take a picture of this place. And then little did I know then about this, that it was a special place for a person called Bobby T. Bear. And Clermont actually had painted it once before, years ago, before Bobby. And Bobby was waning in health and wanted this spot that I was taking a picture of every day. This is before I ever came along doing this.
Yep.
And he commissioned you, and he was to pick the painting up, and he passed away, I think, on that very same weekend.
Yep.
He was supposed to pick that up. And so I did a story about Bobby's place and the painting, and the second painting, we'll say, through Bobby, and then all my photos. And so it remains to this day. And I stopped at 200 and some days in a row, but then I still stop from time to time, take a picture and post it. But that's an interesting story because you never know where your inspiration. It inspired Bobby because he used to go out there and park on the side of the road, and just that was his spot.
Yep.
And then it had caught your eye years before that he had commissioned you that. So anyway, maybe you want to just talk about that I missed things, but it's a story in itself, but you never know where the inspiration's going to come from.
So true, Bill. And then this particular spot, it's true. I painted it way back in the 90s, and that was painted right on the spot, but not where you stood on the highway, where the picture was taken also. Because there's too much traffic on the highway. It's true, it was the best viewpoint of that scene, but I painted it on the spot, more closer to the edge of water. And I don't have a record of that painting because I wasn't keeping records in those days. Pictures, maybe somewhere. I got boxes of pictures, maybe somewhere else.
Maybe you'll find it. But the interesting thing, it was important to Bobby. You had spied it years ago, and then I came along with my camera, and it caught my eye too.
Yes, so true.
You see things in nature that, and of course sometimes.
Well, and we have to admit that this particular spot is a great representation of Northern Ontario.
Oh, it is.
It has this kind of classic look, and the rocks and the spruce and the balsam right there also.
Exactly.
And the little swamp in the back opening up. There's a nice opening at the end of the painting. It's always nice in the painting to have a door somewhere or a hole somewhere where you can escape into the painting. Part of composition. The composition was perfect. Now, the painting was already the scene was already a painting. So it's easy to make a painting of a scene that already looks like a painting.
Yes.
Now, I've learned over the years that you don't have to paint everything that's there. But that scene I did because everything was perfect. You couldn't remove an element out of that scene without hurting it. Everything that was there, everything that's in the painting, everything that's in the pictures you were taking for a whole year, and you made a kind of video of it as a season that changes.
It's changed.
It's magical what you did, Bill. How many people spend the time to do that? Bill, you're a great artist, of course.
Well, thanks for that. But
what would be interesting, though? Yeah. I was just thinking about this. You know how you did the 4-season kind of painting?
Yep.
It'd be interesting to take that one picture and be able to see that change throughout the image. If you kind of I'm not an artist, but you know what I mean?
But Bill has that.
Yeah, but if you were able to combine that into a painting, I think that'd be really neat.
Well,
that would be difficult because the sky keeps changing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's much darker, sometimes bright.
But I did I did that kind of time lapse over.
You did,
and it turned out really, really well. My biggest compliment. I don't claim to be an artist. I'm more of a writer, but But when I do some of my canoe reflection shots, and people say to me afterwards, "Oh, that should be a painting," and then people contact me, say, "Can I paint that?" And I say, "Yeah, go ahead, have at it."
Yep.
And then they see the painting. I don't know, as you know, there's no better compliment than that someone wants to do something with a photo in this case, so that But in nature. And I know, Ben, you've got some more questions, but nature is your theme. I don't think you've diverted too much from that in your career of painting. And I asked Clermont this, more than 3,000 paintings and growing, never mind all the graphic novel shots. But nature is your thing.
Yes. Now, being from a lumber person living off the forest in those days, now that, and I just kept on living off the forest, but not cutting the trees down. If you look at a Toronto artist, he lives in the city. Look at the painting they do. There'll be a lot of structures and lots of very straight lines and lots of cement and highways and street lighting, because they live in that world. Now, it wouldn't be normal for me to paint that because I don't live in that world. I live in this beautiful natural world, like many of us does, of course. And the power of nature just kind of yells at you. It kind of yells at you to be painted.
I like that. I like that. Yeah,
it's true.
It's a calling. It's a calling, but it yells.
Yeah,
it does yell sometimes. It yells at you to take a photo or to paint.
You go by, you're traveling on the 533 or roads where you can safely stop, because if you're going on the highway where you got to drive 120, you can't. But on the 533, that's an example of that, and about the nature yelling at you. You're traveling and you're looking back and forth, then you go, bah! You just this loud voice, like the calling of something.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to use that yelling, because what you do is you turn around and go back.
Yeah.
And for me, it's taking a photo or photos of it.
Well, yeah.
It's
so
just
true.
You just have to go back.
Or you're in your canoe and it's the same. Now the canoe is much easier and you kind of enjoy it.
Well, yeah,
than traveling on the highway
or you have to maneuver the canoe into the spot. Like often, for a while, there was stuck on getting the bow of the canoe just centered into the shot to get depth.
Yep, that's nice.
Like an arrow, and so
the angles. Sometimes you get in the place. I'm in the canoe. Yeah. And I see nothing interesting. I don't paddle in the middle of the lake or middle. No. I'm always right in the shore, close to the shore. Nothing to see, and you just turn the canoe sort of. Oh, I'll turn around here, but you change the angle, and as you change the angle, this whole scene becomes something else, because the light comes in a certain way. That tree that looks pretty odd now looks a lot more interesting in that angle. The angle is so very important on that. Now, the eye line, the angle, you got 360 degrees like this. You got 360 degrees like this. 360 degrees like this, Bill. Where your eye line is, it might not look so good from here, but from here, or looking down at it, or looking up at it, then it becomes something a lot more interesting. The inspiration, when people say, oh, what do? You wait for the inspiration? No, you don't wait for it to come. You got to go and run after it. You chase the inspiration. You got to chase it.
Yeah, I'm learning so much about the vernacular here. I'm going to use as for how I describe some of the small things that I do. But Ben, I know you've got some questions.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit. I don't remember if it was off camera or on camera, but your career's starting to wind down, and you're not painting as much as you used to. But you made a very successful and long career painting, right? How many years would you say that you were a full-time artist?
Well, since the very first graphic novel that came out, that was in 1974.
Oh, wow.
So now it's a long time. If you add all that up.
Well, it's 50 years and counting, and we really encourage people to go to.
When I had the gallery, which is just about a year.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, do you miss the interaction you were on? Well, I've been living in Mattawa and then at the Equality Center, but let's say, more than 30 years, almost 40 years for myself, and dropping into the gallery and buying paintings.
46 years we were there.
And so just talking to you and those kinds of things. And now you moved away from the gallery, and I just wanted to make sure that people go to art1store.com, and that's art with the number one store, all one word, artoneStore.com.
I'll put the link in the description.
Yeah, I'll put it in there. But yeah, tell us about it. That's a bit of a transition.
It is. And then to say I miss it, we spent so many years at it, so we kind of exploited all the avenue of that kind of business, and it was kind of a time we pull out. But the big change is that I ended up painting at 6 o'clock in the morning anymore. Because in those days, the gallery at first the gallery was opening at 9:30. After COVID, we opened only at 11. And we kept those hours. But I was always getting up I was in the studio at 6 o'clock in the morning to be able to produce paintings for the gallery so they would sell. Or the weekends. I had very few weekends. Weekends I was canoeing or painting all weekend or painting specific days, sometimes twice the day or early morning, sometime in the evening. It was a world where there was very little time. It's a very demanding. It's very demanding. And you have to produce so many paintings to make a living there. And the gallery itself was a good tool to expand that market through prints and signed limited editions and smaller prints, decorative prints, the original, of course. But the original all by themselves, living up north, selling only originals wouldn't have been enough. And selling through another gallery wouldn't have been enough. I had to own the gallery to be able to put the work where it should be, to put them in the highlights, and to control the market and live off of everything what the gallery was offering. Prints, limited edition prints, decorative prints, and the originals. So with all that combination together, I was able to make a living. A young artist that's out there and trying to deal through galleries and the cost of that, competing among other artists and all that, not easy. It's a very difficult world, and they have to be very good and very aggressive. But my biggest suggestion would be the gallery, if you own their own little spot somewhere, of course, it's demanding. But that's a very good avenue, especially in a place where there's a lot of tourists. And Malawa, well, they're all eco-tourists, campers, hunters, fishermen, canoers, and skiers, ATVers. They're all this ecosystem people, and that was a perfect spot to have a gallery over here. So the gallery was very sustainable. Now, the art world is a world where it's getting more and more difficult because it's a world where you're competing. I was competing with other artists, and these are among like the Sunday artists or the part-time artists. They take a good share of the market. Some of them are very good. They don't make a market out of it, but they could. Competing against them, competing against the established artists that are selling on the market and all that, and these are the killers. They're brilliant. They're wonderful. But what they do is just, sometimes you look at that and say, holy, that's going to be hard to compete against that. And you're kind of happy when you're able to sell the painting. It's a big deal. And then you're competing with the dead artists because there's still a lot of work out there. The group of 7 is still big competition. There's tons of, now their intellectual property is passed for many of them. So many people are just making prints of the group of 7 and put them on the market by the tons. And you're competing against that world. It's a very brutal world. But now, with modern time, we're dealing with another competitor now, AI. AI is taking over. Now, listen to this. I was there and I was typing, I'd like to have a canoe, just for fun. Gork, that's a new one that came out. The X, Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, yeah.
So painting with canoe and maybe with trees and stuff. And the painting that came up looked very much like my painting. And I said, well, they're taking my artificial intelligence is taking some of our... What artificial intelligence is, it's really a copying world. What artificial intelligence does is copy. And what the artificial intelligence is, it's a international brain. This is all the brains of the planet are in that big, huge brain. And Bill, we got to compete against that.
Yeah,
that's not easy.
And it's such an interesting world because that's one of the big things is how do you compensate people? Because if they're training, because obviously, as you said, AI needs to be trained on something, right? You need to feed it in stuff. The problem, though, is you're the one creating the work, or let's say the artist.
A little speck of what I have is in that big brain.
Yeah, but the problem is you as an artist or whoever, what they're training on, you're not getting compensated. And that was kind of a big problem, is because the companies they're developing it, they're making money on it,
Yes.
right, through subscriptions or whatever.
And they can't compensate it. There's millions of brains in there. How they would go bankrupt? They couldn't.
Yeah,
and you can't stop it.
Yeah.
It was going. Oh, and we're only starting.
Yeah.
This thing is going to take so much space. We're going to be the future artists. I'm glad that
You're getting out of there at the right time.
I just I was in this perfect timing for my career in art, Bill. It was perfect. The timing was perfect because at this end now, they got this new competition that's just and prior to that there was already digital art. It was competing with, which was digital art, and
you never went into
and I'm not
digital
against
art.
that.
Yeah,
because you very much have to be an artist to do a digital painting. Very much have to know all the but in this digital work, it was still very much manageable because we're still dealing with very good artists. AI, now we're not dealing with people anymore. We're dealing with those huge machines. Something interesting, I was talking about abstract art a moment ago. And one day I went on this artificial intelligence, and I say, show me a good abstract painting. And it went tick, 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 tick. Poof, this image came up. It was nice. Then I say, well, okay. Now I mark, show me a bad abstract painting. Tick, 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 tick. The same image comes up. Bill, even artificial intelligence doesn't know the difference between the good and the bad abstract painting.
And it's hard because it's subjective, right?
It's subjective. Subjective in one way. Figurative art, you can easily tell a good and a bad painting. It's night and day. You see a bad painting, you'll be able to tell the difference right away. Abstract art, you can't. Because a few scribbles, because who's that, Miro or Tito, I don't remember, one of those artists, all he did is scribble, like this, with a pencil. And that's called minimal art. And it sells for $100,000. There's nothing there. It's just like that, because it was the first one that did it. Now, if I do that, I won't get the penny. If I'm called this guy, if I have this guy's name, I'm good. But this abstract word, I got something. I really don't like this abstract word. Now, the art in the abstract world relies in the interpretation of the painting. I see the real artist there in the abstract world is the one that interprets the painting. And I say, I was at the museum one time, and this woman was there. She was a presenter. And these students from a school, and she was in front of that smash and mush of paint. Like this, there was... And she was telling all about that painting. And I say, the talent here, the brilliance of that piece of work is this woman talking about it. Yeah. It's the interpretation of the painting. That's where the art is. That's where the art is.
The art's in the eye of the beholder, right? Which is actually kind of interesting. One of the things I wanted to ask too is, and I guess we kind of covered it a little bit, but if you knew what you know now over your whole life painting and running a gallery and doing all that stuff, if you went back to yourself 50 years ago, would you do anything different? Would you approach the way you maybe did stuff differently? Would you go down a different route?
Really, we often ask that question, and I say it's really a science fiction question, because only in science fiction can you go back.
Yeah.
Corey and Bill, you can only go back there. It won't happen. So we, as an artist, I don't think about that. Well, if I could go back, because I know I won't. If I would change something. And your question is very genuine, and it makes a nice logic. I would not change a thing. No. Yeah, I would do exactly the same thing, because I really enjoy what I did. You have to have that passion, but you have to enjoy it. Bill, you enjoy being out there in nature. You feel it in everything you write, everything. whether it's GPS, whether it's canoeing, whether it's nature, what you see, whether it's photography, you feel the passion. Yeah, and you have to have that passion. If you don't have that passion, don't even go in that field.
Passion sells, and your artwork it speaks for itself. And we're glad you've been on the Backroads Bill podcast with us, and we've learned so much today. We'll have to maybe have you back, and again, Ben, you're going to put the website on for Clermont.
But before we go, I do want to ask, what is your connection with Bill? You've been in Mattawa for a number of years, Bill. The Ecology Center is right in your backyard.
Yep.
How did you guys meet, and what is the connection there?
What was that Bill Mason film called Water Walker?
Yeah.
Water Walker. There was this presentation, I believe, at Canada College. I don't remember exactly the place. And there was that big stage there. And the film was about Bill Mason, Water Walker, which was about Water Walker as the canoe, of course. And Bill Mason being an institution also in the canoeing and the natural, the wild world and the creative world. He was a painter also. He was a great painter. And Bill was a presenter before that movie started. And Bill came up in the scene. I don't know. I didn't know Bill at all there, but that's the first time I kind of saw that character, the Bill character. And he came on scene dressed as a voyageur, of course, with the sash tied up and this paddle and the long hair and the band. Oh, you call that? The
bandana?
Yeah.
And the hair and everything. That was and he was a great. Bill's always been a great communicator, and the skills were there to present the film. That's what it was, Bill?
Yes, it was
presenting Water Walker.
Yeah.
And the first time I met Bill, and after that, we kind of met.
Well, we met in the gallery, met on all kind of things. And again, one of the claims to fame, when you go to Mattawa, in the Mattawa Bonfield area, you'll see wooden sculptures. And of course, Big Joe Muffra at Explorers Point, that's a different art form for Clermont, but that was handcrafted, and so were the other sculptures. And I did the behind the scenes getting the money for the project, and then when you go there today, so I guess that's kind of a project.
23 sculptures were done.
Yeah, so
I did the heads of the smaller sculptures. I didn't have the time to do everything. But
do you sculpt a lot?
I did the heads.
Yeah.
Now, Big Joe Muffra, the last one, the one that's on the point now, I did that one complete, the whole structure. That was Bill. That was 6,000 pound structure, all 8 by 8. Now, listen the scale of this now, and then this is true here. The hand itself, I needed 4 8 by 8 for the hand alone. 4 8 by 8, 16 by 16 inches.
Yeah.
Yes, to do just the hand. The head is like 12 8 by 8 just to do the head. 6,000 pounds of weight, and it's done with Douglas fir, which is a wood from BC, and it's very resistant to nature. But all the heads I did in the project with Bill, I did the heads of all the characters. There was 23 of them. That was done in pine. And pine is like sculpting in butter compared to the Douglas fir. The Douglas fir is hard like maple.
Yes.
Not maple, birch, because maple is much harder. Birch. That's like a hardwood. And when I got there with my tools that I was using on pine, I got there with my tools working on the Big Joe Muffra on the Douglas fir, and I went there with the a little grinder with a bit at the end, specially designed for that. Zzz, this thing was 20 feet high, massive like this, and I went start sculpting. Zzz, and then the smoke started going up, and then poof, the bit broke.
No.
And then even a piece of. Then I look at this huge block of wood, and I say, I'm going to be here for eternity. If we want to know the meaning of eternity, that's what it's going to be. Then I got carbide tools and all that, and that
You're good.
finally worked out pretty well.
Do you
I needed
find
special tools to cut that wood.
Do you find there's a big difference between sculpting and painting in terms of how you, not necessarily obviously approach it differently, but when you envision it in your head and you go about...
Sculpting is the exact opposite of painting. Painting, what we do, usually it's put on the undercolors. It's whatever's there. It's very bold. When I'm in nature, no, you have to go straight to the detail. But when you're kind of doing more of the studio work, you have to do that background work kind of, and then you gradually work to the finish. And at the end is the finish. Sculpture is the opposite. Instead of finish, you got to remove the back work. You understand? You got to remove that and go toward the finish instead of coming from the rough work to the finish on the painting.
Opposite.
On the other one, it said from the bottom coming out, the sculpture is from outside going in.
Now, do you see that personally as like a challenge? So
Yes.
when you look at it, you go, "Ooh, I'm excited to go into this challenge," versus looking at it and be like, "Oh, this isn't my wheelhouse."
It's not my world.
You're not a big.
You see, and it's simple because I was in trained sculpture. Sculptures that are sculptures, they were trained as kids, and their brain is wired so that they understand sculpture. The brain is wired for that, and when your brain is wired for painting, and you tackle a sculpture, it's like writing backward.
Yeah.
You see, you have to think of everything. While painting is nice, like a signature, so easy. But
Was this your first sculpture work when you did this project, or did you do stuff beforehand?
no,
So, that was the.
Yeah.
That's a big project to
It is.
tackle. As your,
Yeah,
it was
no,
a big
and that-
project.
Did you ever think like, what if I mess this up? You
Well,
know?
I had some kind of. Sometimes in paintings, I would use sculpture that I would do with plasticine. But plasticine is not like you can mold it. It's not It's not like removing a piece and
It's
you
gone.
can't put it back.
Yeah.
It's much easier to work sculpture in plasticine. That was my only work, because often there was a scene I wanted. I remember one scene where the wolves are running after a moose, and one of them is jumping up, and the moose is they're twisting their head. A trapper told me about that. He says they fight like this. It's twist of the head. That's the way they go. So in the painting, the wolf is like this, but there's no reference of that. So I had to make a sculpture of the wolf, of the moose, doing that spin of the head, and at the same time of the wolves attacking. So I had to make a whole sculpture of that.
Just so you could see and you could
So I
vision
could
it.
see and then put the light here and see where the light's coming on. And the nice thing with the sculpture is that it's 3D. This is your sculpture here. Well, if I take a picture of this, that's it. That's the angle I have. I'm stuck with it. Correct? Well, the sculpture, I can turn it. I can lift it up. And look at it. I can light it this way. In the picture, the light comes from one way. You can't change the source of the light anymore. A sculpture, then you turn it whichever way you want. You put the light on it. No, I don't like it. I want to turn it like this. The eye line, I'll change the eye line. It's going to be here. It's going to be there. It's going to be there. Oh, this is much better. The light. Oh, now I like it. Stop it there. Stop it. It's a million picture. It's like having a million picture. And you have full control on how you're going to set it. And once your scene is perfect, moose, wolves, I like that angle. I look at all the other angles. I was talking about this 360 degree, this ball of degrees. Like this, the eye line, same for the light and everything. That's the angle. Now I work from that. And I do the sketches, and then I do the painting. And then I'll use reference of moose and wolves for the markings and all that. But I'm not copying the scene. Now, like Bill painting, Bill's pictures, I said, Bill, those pictures are perfect. The angles are good, the light is good, the attitude, because the animal in the animals in the picture they were sending me were actually living what they were doing. They were defending the prey. They were defending what they just killed. The eagles were there. How interesting a story can that be, Bill? Eh?
Yeah.
You had the eagles there coming. Now, you had the bald eagle and you had the golden eagle. Golden eagle, these are rare birds right here in our backyard. Bill put those pictures online. And I say, holy gee, this is perfect. The light is perfect. The aggressivity is perfect because they're living it. I don't have to make sculpture. It's all Bill. I say, can I use those pictures?
Yeah, I remember that
this
day.
Is perfect.
That's quite an honor
Bill
to have that.
Go ahead. He said, yeah, use them. Okay, Bill, I'm so happy. And then it was all there.
And I think, Bill, you have that painting, don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the painting and that did a story on that as well, and that was that was indeed another honor, and it's been an honor to have you here in the studio for the Backroads Bill Podcast with Ben, and we'll have to have you back, long overdue, and paint on, and again, we'll look forward to your next masterpiece.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, you're most welcome. It was a pleasure.
Perfect. Awesome.
Everybody likes talking about themselves.
So big thank you to Clermont for jumping on. It was a pleasure to have him on the podcast. Again, a wealth of information, incredibly talented, and of course, very gracious for coming into the studio. Not often do we get people in the studio, and it's always great when people are able to physically be here. And again, taking some of the time out of his day is always appreciated. So very happy we finally got to release it out into the world, and you guys got to see it, which is obviously it's been kind of in the vault of recordings for a while, and it's great to finally have it out as an episode. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find more episodes of the Backroads Bill Podcast on your favorite podcast players. The audio version, of course, is available on Apple, Spotify, etc. The video version can be found on the North Bay Echo YouTube channel. And of course, everything can be found at northbayecho.ca, where you can find not just the Backroads Bill Podcast, but all sorts of other local podcasts, including Echo Essentials, To North Bay with Love, and the Echo Sportscast. Also, check out our newsletter, Echo Essentials, which comes to your inbox once a week. It's completely free, and it keeps you up to date with what's going on in the Echo network, as well as other events going on in the North Bay area. So that wraps things up for us. Join us again next week for yet another Backroads adventure.